did see this, and I just kind of wanted to dive into this because the top 10 teams in the NFL, according to CBS Sports right now, starts with the Browns, Ravens, Bills, Jaguars, Cowboys at 6, Eagles, Niners, Lions, Dolphins, and Chiefs. Would you say that's a fair assessment of
it's fair right now,
where the NFL is right now?
I think playoff time, I would probably not pick the Lions to beat San Francisco or Philadelphia. But I get how good they're playing right now. So I get power ranking them now as the number 1 team in the NFC. I get doing that, but I will have a hard time coming around to I think the Lions are going to the Super Bowl.
The fatal flaw for the Cowboys. This is all fatal flaws for those top 10 teams. 877-881-1053. What do you think the Cowboys' fatal flaw is? And before we get to it, Mike, I just wanted to see if we have a good assessment of what the other teams are. And then we'll get to the Cowboys in just a second. But when it comes to the Chiefs, they're 5-1 right now.
Okay.
The combination of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, always trustworthy. But the lack of a consistent pass catcher might be prompting Mahomes' more reckless start to 2023. Kelsey, still top tier safety valve, but Mahomes doesn't have anybody. He's like nonchalantly throwing the ball, chucking downfield, and then, he didn't have anybody they can just chuck it up to.
Kadarius Toney wasn't the answer. Good try. Wasn't the answer. Sky Moore, hey, okay pick, but he is not the answer that a lot of people thought he might be out of college. He's just another guy. He looks like he's going to be a solid number 3 receiver in the NFL. It's like they're going with 5 number 3 receivers in the NFL. They don't have a 1. I don't even think they have a 2.
I don't either.
And so they are going to be an interesting team. They didn't have to give up anything except money. They would have to mess up a little bit of the future for DeAndre Hopkins. They wouldn't even consider it. So I don't know how they're going to consider maybe trading for a wide receiver that makes money or a reliable guy on a bad team when they wouldn't even consider going after DeAndre Hopkins.
I know they've made the trade for McCole Hardman, and I don't know that. I don't think that's going to be. He has a connection with him, but I don't know if that was a hey, we need him. Let's go 3. Get him. I don't know how much that changed anything, but I will say this: we know a very big time Kansas City Chiefs fan. That's a Tolo, and he's like, look, man, I know everybody keeps saying this, but it's not for us. It's not the reality. And I wonder if they're at a point now, Mike, where they're just like, we trust in Mahomes and Andy Reid so much. Yeah. We don't have problems because we can always fall in on that. And somebody said, don't sleep on Rashee Rice. But so far, he hasn't been, anything other than another guy.
I'm assuming that somebody texting in because they really liked him in the draft.
Probably so. Yeah, probably so.
And, hey, maybe a year or 2 from now, he helps. Maybe at the end of the year, he gets better. But you have to be honest with yourself. If Rice was on the Dallas Cowboys, is he better than CeeDee Lamb? No. Is he better than Brandon Cooks? Probably not. That makes him a number 3. You can just keep going down teams and go, gosh, all of these receivers on Kansas City mostly fit on what would be considered playoff teams as a number 3 receiver at best.
The number 2 is the Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa is health concerns. There's always that concern there, but he's done a fine job so far staying upright. He did his jiu-jitsu in the offseason. Looks like he's doing well there. But the middle of Vic Fangio's defense. I have a good friend who is a big-time Dolphins fan, and she was like, Vic Fangio needs to be fired. And I was like, whoa! And so that's quietly giving up more points than all of the other top 6 teams in the NFL. Or all but 6 teams, but their offense is so good. That's where, Mike, whenever you're really assessing your team, and you say this a lot, and a lot of people get really upset whenever we say something like this. Broadus says this so many times. Self-assessment is so important to what your success is going to be. If you're not really looking at yourself and going, hey, can we make up for this? And if it's not working, then there's a problem. Number 3 is the Lions. And they've been interesting, man, at 5-1, but their offensive line's health so far is a big concern. The 49ers, I think that's where we kind of get into the big, this is the team, right? Because they beat the Cowboys so many times. They are the road to the NFC Championship, it feels like. At some point, you're going to have to go through them. It's the health of their star power. Christian McCaffrey, that's where the health is. That's the Deebo Samuels, the Trent Williams, those guys. If they stay healthy, then the Niners are good. If they don't, what are the 49ers?
Right, especially when you consider like the 49ers that we're seeing in this iteration really got to their heights when they traded for Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think I was talking to KG, and one of the things that he was mentioning is like when it's with Christian McCaffrey, it's when you start seeing the injuries, then that season ends up being kind of injury plagued. And I know that sounds obvious, but like when you're not seeing that early on, he seems to be relatively durable. But once you start seeing kind of the nicks and bruises, do those then snowball? And so that I imagine is some level of concern for the Niners this year.
Yeah, and again that's why real assessment of yourself. The Eagles fall in at 5, and they say if it's not for their secondary injuries, which so far haven't like prevented them from doing what they want to do defensively, their offensive recklessness. That's something that I did not know, and I wasn't maybe thinking about, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they do against Miami this week. And looking forward on November 5th, the day after what potentially could be Game 7 of the World Series. If they're offensively reckless, is that a place that you can expose them? For the Cowboys, here it is, Mike.
Okay.
Here it is, Reggie. The offensive line's durability. Would you agree that is the Dallas Cowboys' fatal flaw?
I was thinking, if I was going to guess, this team's ability to run the ball. So it goes hand in hand. That was going to be my guess, even though it's stopping the run too. I just feel like you have to have, I think it's been proven. You can say I'm wrong. It's fine. It's just my opinion. It's your opinion. That Dak has to have a strong running game to be a successful quarterback. Okay. And right now, because they don't, it puts Dak in positions that aren't maybe fair to his abilities at times.
I see that.
Especially with the way that Mike McCarthy's kind of molded this offense. A lot of the rhetoric was the idea that we want to make it better for our defense. We want to play to our defensive strength, which in some ways means you need to be able to run the football, because especially if you're going to have a lot of the quick passing West Coast offense, without you can't really do that without being able to run the ball somewhat successfully. So yeah, no, I think you're right in that regard.
Yeah, I'm looking at the fan text right now, and I think we need a power running back, like our running backs, but with our offensive line. I think we need more power in that part of the run game, which, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott was that. He just wasn't going to take a backseat to Tony Pollard, and the money was a situation there. Giving Dak a good number 2, Cooks is not cutting it, and Gallup is out in left field. Cooks, they just started establishing rapport. I'm going to give that some more time, because I know what I saw. I know what I was believing I saw in training camp, and I hadn't seen it until this Monday night.
Yeah, how are you making that jive? Because obviously I did not have the good fortune of going out to Oxnard, but it feels like all of you guys that went to Oxnard were kind of talking about some of the explosive type things that you saw that were being kind of developed and put in. And those of us that were not there, that are watching on TV or in the stadium, are not seeing the things that you described on the field. How are you kind of making that jive?
I don't understand why they haven't just opened all that up yet. And I don't know if it's one of those things where I'm just like, Mike McCarthy's unwilling to do it. He hasn't been in the right position, because maybe they haven't had, the right plays that he needed beforehand to set up something like that. Maybe those things aren't working. Maybe the defenses aren't giving it to him. But we are past the point now where it is new offense. We are at a point where you should have gotten it. You should be in your offense. The installment's done. So now you should be at a point where you're moving forward and showing some progression. We just haven't seen that yet so far.